Welcome to In the Studio, a production of Davis Media Access. Today we have a subject that quite a few people in Davis might know about, but a lot don't. And we have a guest with us today called Norton, Cole Norton, excuse me. And she's going to talk to us all about the third space in Davis. And I guess just to start things off with, just in a nutshell, before we get into it, what exactly is Third Space?
So Third Space is a multi-purpose venue that's on Olive Drive.
Right.
That houses an art collective, pop-up shops, a monthly flea market, and a host of other community activities, from a new theatre group called the Art Theatre of Davis to other kinds of events that people in the community will email us about, and we will help them, give them the resources that they need to put on a successful event.
Okay. So before we dig into exactly what Third Space is and does, let's just talk a little bit about Lauren. From your accent, it sounds like you're from West Sacramento. Is this true?
No, I am from the east coast of Ireland.
Okay.
And I moved to Davis in 2009 to do my master's in creative writing. And I did that and taught at the university for a couple of years. And then I was involved in the music scene here, and I worked for a local business downtown. And then the time came when I felt like I wanted to start my own thing. And the Davis Flea Market was my first entry into community involvement. And that started in January 2012. We just had our 2-year anniversary. And I was going to local meetings and getting to know who the people in town were who were interested in putting on the Davis Music Festival and just getting involved and having this civic engagement thing happening. And after a year, I felt like I was ready to make the commitment of signing a lease somewhere and putting a roof on top of all of the stuff that we were doing. That was associated with Davis Flea Market, that was associated with putting on house shows. And yeah, in August of last year, we signed the lease. Mm-hmm.
So I've known Lauren for maybe a year and a half now. And the one thing I know about Lauren is I have to drink one of these to keep up with her, and that's a Red Bull. Because Lauren not only sings, she plays the guitar, you write songs, you do poetry, you have a full-time job, and now you're taking on all of this. So how many Red Bulls do you go through a day?
I very rarely drink Red Bull. I drink a lot of pepper coffee, several cups a day of that. I don't sleep very well, that's for sure. And it's not true to say that I do all of those things well. In fact, since I've taken on a more administrative role with Third Space, I feel like I hardly ever do anything creative anymore.
Okay.
I certainly haven't written a poem in a very long time. But I've been trying to play more often, because there's definitely a feeling and a satisfaction that you get from performing that you don't get when you're cleaning up after a show or putting out chairs or paying the bills.
Third Space is basically divided into three categories: shops and studios, art and music, and the flea market.
Right.
So let's just talk a little bit about shops and studio and pop-up shops, right? So for people who don't know what a pop-up shop is, what exactly is a pop-up show?
So a pop-up shop is an idea that we haven't really explored enough at Third Space so far. The idea was that we could create a low-risk retail environment, so that if you were someone who had been doing the flea market for a long time, maybe you would come in 5 days a week and set up your little retail shop and meet with customers and develop your brand. And
Right.
and we've experimented with that a little bit, but it's been difficult getting to know the building and the limitations of the building. For people who haven't been there, it's a 4,000 square foot warehouse, and it was empty for 2 years before we moved in. So we had to do an awful lot of work just to make it
Maybe
feel
we can take a
hospitable.
look at a picture of that.
Yeah,
You know,
actually,
I think
we
we
do.
have a picture of that available. There you
So
go.
yeah, that was that's what it looked like when we moved in. You can see there were a lot of leaves and, you know, there wasn't electricity. I don't think when we first moved in. And we have those garage style roll up doors,
Right.
which are great for putting on industrial shows and putting on the flea market, but weren't quite ready for like a retail environment. So that's something that we want to do longer term. It still works great with the flea market, and I love meeting with people who want to start their own business
Right.
and fostering that level of entrepreneurship. So yeah, that's definitely something that is a longer term goal, and I think would work really well if we were working with other established businesses in Davis.
And then the other part is the art and music.
Yeah, so this is probably the most fully formed
Right.
part of the concept, and mostly because there was such a history and such a culture of that already in Davis. Two of the people who are really involved with starting Third Space and their directors at the art collective, Sally Hensel and Evan Clayberg, they had been running shows at the Bike Forth over on 4th and L.
Right.
And they've been putting on house shows for years. Sally is very involved in the scene in Fresno where she's from. And also, as you know, the summer shows end around once the rain starts around
Right.
October, and that was when we were gearing up for a season of putting on music events. So a lot of the shows, a lot of the bands that were touring who would have maybe played at Sophia's were all of a sudden emailing us about playing, and so it was very easy to start just saying yes to those shows. And I think in the first month we were doing 3 or 4 shows a week, which was just silly. It was too many shows
Too
for
many
us to
shows.
handle.
Wow.
But you know, kind of baptism by fire in terms of learning about the process.
So under the art thing, do you rent lofts for artists to do their work there, or?
We do. There is dedicated studio space.
Okay.
That's currently all of it is rented out. That could change if people are interested in having a dedicated studio. They should definitely get in touch and we can put them on a list.
Okay.
But yeah, the studios that we can close up in the evening and that people can say this is my space to work in, those are all currently full. And then there's shared space. And the Third Space Art Collective, which is actually separate from Third Space, it's an entirely different entity that is also under the shelter of Fractured Atlas, which shelters nonprofits.
Okay.
They run open studio hours every Thursday, noon to 6, and yeah, they put on a lot of shows, a lot of experimental shows, a lot of shows that have both a music and a visual component,
Okay.
mixed media.
And then the last of the three is the flea market,
Yeah.
and that's probably the most well-known part of Third Space in Davis.
Yeah, so Noelle Walsh is currently coordinating the flea market. I'm still involved in the promoting of it, and I'm there to consult, and you know, it's still very hard for me to like completely be hands off about it because it's my baby.
And
But
it's
the
fun.
it's really fun. It
It's
happens
fun,
once a
yeah.
month. We'll typically bring in about 30 vendors and a food truck and a band, and it pays a big chunk of the rent at Third Space.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Alrighty, so what are some of the different programs and activities at Third Space? I happened to look at your website, and I saw there's a group that does linoleum cutouts. There's a support group of some sort there, I believe.
Compassionate coaching.
Yes. So just you know, maybe not all of them, but just give us an inkling for what goes on at Third Space besides what we've talked about.
Well, so as not to mention anything that's out of date by the time that this airs, I would encourage
Okay.
people to go to the website and look at what's happening because it's constantly changing.
Okay.
And because we have this model of, you know, it's not me deciding what the program is. I'm very much dependent on people bringing me their ideas and then also being able to fulfill that idea. Because people tend to be very good at having a good idea and being like, oh, you should do this.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you should do that. Like, I have too much on right now. So it's right now we do have a couple of people who are running communication coaching. So they have an office at Third Space, and you can find them on our website and have a consultation with them or get involved in one of their workshops. And there have been lino print workshops, that's screen printing workshops, and I'm sure we will continue to have those.
Okay.
They're very popular. And I think we've also had like music lessons. There's this great sound room that one of the art collective members put in a huge amount
Andy
of money.
Lentz did a workshop there, I believe, didn't he, for fiddle playing?
I think he did that at N Street co-housing, actually.
Oh, he did.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
sorry.
Which is a place where I used to live, so
Okay.
I can see the connection. But that's more of a place where we imagine people will record. So it's almost 100% soundproofed. So it was built by a local lawyer who wanted to have a space where he could learn to play guitar without people overhearing him. And now he's also offering it up for people to rent at a very, very reasonable price. So yeah, I would encourage people who want to maybe teach guitar lessons, teach horn lessons. This is a good place to do it.
The community, how receptive is it? Feedback from the community itself, the city, licensing issues. Can you kind of fill us in with this?
That's a many part question, I think.
Okay.
I would say the majority of feedback is really good, especially from parents, because it is a place that it's a dry venue. It's all ages. It feels safe, and we involve a lot of young people, and they police themselves really. So parents, teachers, principals, all of whom have visited Third Space have given us the thumbs up, and that's been really nice. Our neighbours on Olive Drive are fantastic. We have Rock Band University just like a few feet away, and for our first shows we didn't even have a PA, and they like loaned us their PA. Rocknasium, they're all fantastic people too, and we're right on the bike path, so people are constantly going by on their way to the university and being like walking in and asking what is this place, and really enjoying the idea, and so then it's the next part of that is once there is that level of interest and people enjoy it, how do you rope them into taking ownership of it?
Okay. Okay. The website, are you responsible for that? Because it's a nice website. Who does that? It's very informative, it's easy to read, it's entertaining.
That's the wonderful Evan Clayburgh,
Wow.
who does web design for a lot of people in town, and he's also a graphic designer and an animator and a musician, and yeah, he drinks a lot of coffee as well, I think. So yeah, we had talked about what we wanted the website to do. We wanted it to be pretty user friendly and to kind of reflect how the current organization of Third Space is. Because really, I'm just a landlord at Third Space. I mean, I'll take ownership of a couple of events per month that I feel really excited about, like the Stealth Olvang show that you came to see, and he played in your studio as well, and Mick Flannery, who is an artist from Ireland that I've kind of worshipped for the last 5 years or so. So I will take responsibility and say this is a Third Space show. But most of the things that go on at Third Space, I don't really do much for. I'll let people in, and I'll lock up after them. But really, it's people running their own.
You're like
events.
an incubator.
An incubator.
Incubator. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The space rental is, from what I saw on the website, is very attractive, and so it has to be a really big plus for the struggling artists in this town, because I can't imagine any other place in Davis that can do this in terms of keeping the cost for the people using the spaces low.
Yeah, we were lucky, like I said, to have found that space, because when I first pitched the idea of Third Space, which is modelled on a space in Dublin called Exchange, and I should tip my hat to them because it was a group of mostly Dublin students, and when I was leaving Dublin around 2008, we were in the pit of the recession, and a bunch of like young people got together and started the Exchange, which was an art collective that also has this like multi-purpose feel, and is a space in Dublin that's alcohol free, probably the only space. And so, you know, I was really, really inspired by what they did. And when I came to Davis and worked as a teacher and fell in love with this town and wanted to be a part of it in a way that felt more participatory and not just as a consumer, I immediately thought of Exchange and went to downtown Davis meetings and kind of pitched the idea, and people were like, this is Davis, we don't have empty buildings, like we're at 100% occupancy. And so yeah, to have found the space that we did, and as affordable as it is, was a major coup.
Yeah.
You know, when people walk into it still, they're just like, how is this place here? It's, you know, right next to downtown.
Right. I mean, space in downtown.
There's free parking.
You know, 10 or 15 grand a month,
right,
for rent.
Yeah. And I did look at I did a pop-up flea market at the Dimple space.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, about a year ago. And, you know, the cost of that building for a weekend, you can have the entire third space for a month. So it was a no-brainer.
Your projection, your hope, your vision for this, let's say 5 years down the road, what do you see?
Well, I hope there's someone else sitting here talking about third space, to be honest. I think that would be the best situation. There is interest from other towns to do something similar, and I've been kind of called on in a possibly consulting capacity to run like a third space Napa or a third space Sonoma, third space Sacramento. I would love to see the idea taking root in other areas. Our lease expires at the end of this year, and then we don't really know exactly what's going to happen to the building. If they decide to sell it, I would love to be in the position to go in with a bunch of investors and buy it and really retrofit the space and make it more of a traditional venue.
Now, isn't the city looking at that property to redevelop it, and is that a concern or an issue for you?
The Nishi property, which is the 44-acre site directly across the road from us, that is being looked at by a firm in Berkeley, and they've presented a couple different options for how that land would be redeveloped. And looking at their plans, it's very hard to see how they could have that level of development with high density housing and, you know, like urban spaces and technology parks without widening the road that our building is on. And that was a provision of our lease, that potentially our building would just be torn down at the end of the year and the road would be widened. You know, it's really hard to say exactly what will happen with those. We're maintaining a presence at community or at city meetings, and I have been in contact with the consultants who are working on the development, and I think they need to demonstrate a level of engagement with existing businesses and with community people. So having third space on their side is a boon to them for whatever plan they propose. So yeah, we're just going to keep rubbing shoulders and you know, being a voice, and whether we were able to continue in a third space or we open a fourth space. Yes. I think the idea is well liked enough that it will continue in some form.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. My favorite part of it is the music part, and watching a concert there. It's such an intimate, comfortable. You know, it's like the artist is performing for you personally. Do you get any feedback from artists on how they enjoyed playing there? And you've had some good artists here, world famous figures, down to just local figures.
Yeah, we had
and here's a picture of.
There's Stelvolvang on one of my vintage chairs.
And he's with the Lumineers.
Yeah, that was a fantastic night. We were well over capacity, and we also had a local high school band playing. And at the end of that show, Stealth called them up, and they kind of improvised
It was a beautiful
song.
show.
It was, yeah.
And you know what stands out with that show is when, and you can only do this in an intimate setting, people were talking in the background during the other acts. And when he came up, people were still talking. And what did he do? He jumped on that chair and then very quietly started playing, and everybody quieted down to hear it. You couldn't do that in a bar.
No. Oh well, maybe you could. I think that's a very good technique when you want people to listen to you rather than talking louder, talk quieter.
But you do get feedback from people.
We do, and there was a great moment when Peggy Sue, which is this band from the UK, played a few weeks ago actually, and they played with a band called Mandolin Orange, and it was one of the 3 days I think in the last year where it rained heavily. And they were a big act, and there was Intel was involved in sponsoring the show, and their booker was someone in New York, so there were a lot of different strands to pull together to be able to bring such a big act, a nationally touring act, an international act, to Third Space. And then of course there was just lashing rain, and I was driving from work to the venue to get everything set up when I got a call from the drummer saying that could I just pop into the music store and get him a new drum head because it had broken the night before. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to open the doors, set up the chairs, let in the Intel people, set up the catering, go and buy you a drum head. And so when they arrived, and of course I was drenched, I was like I was too stressed to even be like, I'm so glad you're here, I'm so glad you're playing. And then when they played, we had this, it was again another full house, like that Stealth Hellbang show. And they played, and there was just one moment when they were like, so this warehouse is the most happening place in Davis, isn't it? And people were like, yeah. And it was like, oh, okay, that's right. It's a ton of work, but you provide this intimate space where a performer can be heard and an audience can interact with a performer. And people, I think, are so disconnected from how music is made these days. And, if you grow up in the suburbs and you listen to MP3s and you download music, and you never really get a sense of like how much work goes into learning your instrument and then learning how to do it, to play it in front of people and be engaging. And so to kind of usher people into that is a very hallowed thing.
Wonderful thing for the community to have, and we're glad you're the driving force behind this here. Have you ever thought of a Kickstarter for Third Space?
Well, I've been lucky enough that with the Flea Market model and having businesses come and operate in Third Space, that takes off the financial pressure for the shows to make a ton of money. We can pretty much get by on the artists who are privately renting studio space, and the Flea Market once a month, that covers most of our operating costs. And I think people have Kickstarter fatigue. I know I do to an extent.
Tea.
Fatigue.
Oh, fatigue.
Fatigue,
okay,
yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to run it more as a traditional business and prove that something like that, you're not just running it for merit, you're running it because it makes money.
Right.
People can make a living off of doing it. So for me, I didn't personally go like the 501c3 route. The Art Collective, as I said, they are sponsored by Fractured Atlas, which provides resources and a means for people to donate to Third Space Art Collective and write that off on their taxes. But for me, seeing as well in the recession how so many arts organizations lost their funding and had the rug pulled out from underneath them, I was wary of having to rely on kind of the goodwill of strangers to believe that art was something that needed to be compensated privately. So I wanted to make it viable as a business.
Is there any, just to get back to the non-alcoholic thing, is there any push to maybe have a venue where you could serve alcohol there, or is that not really in the question?
No, it's not. It's a part of our lease that we don't.
Okay.
And that's something I'm very comfortable with myself. What I would like to do is maybe partner with Murder Burger or the hotel that's right next to us
Right.
to maybe have them do like a little club bar, so that, you know, if there are people who are coming to our shows who really absolutely have to have a beer,
Right.
that they could go and do that somewhere else, and we don't have to worry about providing the security and the licensing and all that.
How do you, are you at a point now where people come to you for the music, or are you still out there trying to reach?
Oh no, we get way more requests than we can handle.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Once you're on like one booker's radar, once you're on one good band's list of a place they've played, everyone's looking at that. And I know myself from touring and booking that really the best way to go about it is to find a band that you like, who you think have a similar audience to you, and then just mimic their tour schedule. So bands coming down from Seattle see that, you know, the lower 48 are playing, and they'll be like, okay, well, let's send them a request and see if we can.
Okay, so we haven't mentioned one thing yet, and we're almost out of time. We have 1 minute. What is your address?
Okay, 946 Olive Drive. It's right next to Red Rum Burger.
Red Rum Burger, okay, right off the freeway.
Right off the freeway, very accessible.
So I want to thank you for sharing your dream with us. And I want to thank Davis Media Access for allowing you to talk about this a little bit, and especially in the studio. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thanks, Peter.